بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم. Right. ولقد وصلنا إلى كتاب الطهارات من كتاب القاضي عياض الإعلام بحدود قواعد الإسلام. Right, we finished Kitab al-Salah, and as you recall, Qadi Iyad is one of the few scholars who has a varied approach to his book of fiqh. He begins with Salah before Tahara, a very unique and rare type of trend. People generally begin with Tahara because you do Tahara and then you pray. He began with Salah and then Tahara. One of the reasons being that Tahara doesn't actually become necessary until Salah becomes necessary. So that's one approach. Another angle could have been that he was explaining the 5 pillars, and therefore it was only appropriate to begin with the actual pillar and then to follow it with any peripheral relevance. نعم الطهارات. جيد. من يقرأ لنا؟ من يريد أن يقرأ؟ سعد تريد أن تقرأ؟ جميل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال القاضي رحمه الله ونفع الله به وبكم: الطهارات وأقسام الطهارة للصلوات 4: غسل ووضوء وتيمم وإزالة نجس أو نجس. فالغسل لجميع الجسد وأقسامه 3: فرض وسنة وفضيلة مستحبة.
شكرا. Right. أقسام الطهارة, that the kinds of tahara lis-salawat regarding salah are 4. Okay, 4. It says غسل ووضوء وتيمم وإزالة نجس, that removal of impurities. Okay, شرعا طهارة is إزالة الأحداث and أخباث. Okay, خبث and حدث. خبث is an actual impurity, and hadath is a ritual impurity. So when somebody has lost his wudu, that is a ritual impurity, the state that he is in. The actual, if a person, for example, goes to the toilet, the act in itself, he will relieve himself, that will be actual impurities. Or impurities could be of other kinds, what we will learn about, whether it will be things like blood or alcohol or so on. These things are actual impurities. As to ritual impurities, then we're talking about the state that you are in. Okay. So that said, فَالْغُسْلُ لِجَمِيعِ الْجَسَدِ. So he is beginning with ghusl. It is for the entire body. وَأَقْسَامُ ثَلَاثَةً. And it has 3 categories to it: the fard, sunnah and fadila, which can be known as mustahab as well, like whether it's mustahab or fadila or mandub. These are all synonyms that are used to describe a recommended category. نعم ففروضه 6 أغسال. So he will now go through the obligations.
فمفروضه 6 أغسال.
بصوت أرفع.
فمفروضه 6 أغسال: الغسل لإنزال الماء الدافق للذة المعتادة كيف كان، أو لمغيب الحشفة في قبل أو دبر ممن كان، ولانقطاع دم الحيض، ولولادة النفساء إن لم يخرج مع الولد دم، ولانقطاع دمها إن خرج معه أو بعده دم، وغسل الكافر يسلم. وهذه الأحداث هي موجبات الغسل ومفسداته.
شكرا. ففروضه 6 أغسال. Okay, 6 things that he will go through, 6 obligations really. And what he's talking about here, sittatu aghsal, that ghusl being wajib for these 6 occasions or 6 situations or 6 conditions. لإنزال الماء الدافق للذة المعتادة كيف كان. Upon ejaculation is in a natural manner, however it may be. Okay, now that's he's gone through that, but he has added the qaid there of it being natural. So we're not talking about an illness, we're not talking about an ailment or anything like that. We're talking about something being natural. أو لمغيب الحشفة في قبل أو دبر ممن كان. Or for actual penetration, sexual penetration, whether, and he does mention, however that penetration may be from whatever orifice, it will actually invalidate the ghusl.
Is this an implicit? What's the word? Fatwa, principality?
To, oh, is he condoning? Because he said,
What he's saying is Jews.
he's not necessarily saying that, but he's just, I suppose one could be, exactly, one could be saying that, well, this maybe happens, perhaps, whether it's regular or irregular, but it tends to take place. So he's just addressing the issue that, you see, when you say that لِمَغِيبِ الْحَشَفَةِ, that penetration to the extent that the actual gland has penetrated. Now, somebody could then ask, well, wait a minute, does it have to be, for example, vaginal, or could it be, as he's mentioned here, anal, etc.? The thing is that he's just covered it by saying, look, it's generic. Whatever orifice, that ghusl would be wajib. And I think they base that upon the linguistics of the term farj. Okay, so which linguistically would go back to like an orifice. Okay. نعم والانقطاع دم الحيض. And if the menstrual bleeding has stopped, ولولادة النفساء إن لم يخرج مع الولد الدم. So also if he says here childbirth, giving birth, even if there was no blood which followed. وَلِنْقِطَاعِ دَمِهَا إِنْ خَرَجَ مَعَهُ. Or, as in natural cases, that there is blood, but when that stops. Okay? وَبَعْدَهُ دَمْ. That's if, regardless whether the bleeding began with childbirth or after it, that bleeding that takes place, once that stops, there is ghusl, which is necessary. وَغُسْلُ الْكَافِرِ Yuslim, that a non-Muslim embracing Islam. Now, there is a hadith in Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, muttafaqun alayh, of Thumamatul Hanafi, that when he embraces Islam, and there are other occasions as well that the Prophet ﷺ said, go to, take a ghusl. Now the question here has been, and there is ikhtilaf amongst ulama, that is this ghusl for embracing Islam, or is it because they were in a state of ritual impurity? Is it because naturally at some point of their lives they would have been junub, and now, presume if they are adults, and now they've embraced Islam, do they have to? And there is this debate, and there isn't no clear-cut evidence to say either, which is, because the Prophet ﷺ didn't explain, he just told him once he embraced Islam to take a ghusl. So there is speculation. The understanding would be that it would be a ritual act, and it isn't to remove that. I mean, I know removing the ritual impurity is also in a way ritual, but it's not to do with that, because in al-Islam yajubbu ma kana qabla, that Islam removes or either annihilates, or it kind of I suppose discards that which went before it. So if a person embraced Islam, everything prior to that is wiped out and cancelled out, and that would include all the states and so on that a person was in. So this would, in my understanding, it's also You see, it's important when people do something. See, the way the human psyche works is for certain events which they see as almost rites of passage. It is important that because the way the mind works is it clings to rituals. It is important that they are perhaps given a ritual to fulfill psychologically that rite of passage. An example is like, and somebody asked this to me once about like a nikah, getting married, rite of passage. You see, actually getting married, like doing the actual nikah, could just take a few seconds. Literally, just, do you accept this? Yes you do. Do you accept it? Yes you do. Okay, you're married. But the truth is, if you did that for somebody, it wouldn't quite cut it for them, because the mind is recognizing that, wait a minute, this is a rite of passage. I need something a bit more symbolic, something that's going to be like a ritual like. So you would recite certain verses, you'd do certain things, you'd make it look like a protocol, a procedure, something that will now give their mind some comfort that they've been through a ritual for this rite of passage. In a similar way, when a person embraces Islam, there is the outward expression, the testimony of faith. There is the coming to terms with what it is. And then a washing, it kind of gives that ritual almost in a way that it cleanses and you've kind of entered into something. And in my understanding, that is perhaps one of the reasons why there is a ghusl with the embracing of Islam. Yeah, I mean, generally, like he's put it here as, yep, it is. There is some debate, and even within the Maliki madhab, as it not necessarily being fard. I mean, I could see that point, that it's maybe not necessarily fard, but it's very important based on that, to give that understanding. That's why they may have treated it like fard. نعم وهذه الأحداث هي موجبات الغسل ومفسداته. Right, these are those things which necessitate ghusl and invalidate it also. نعم.
Can I just ask about,
No.
the postnatal bleeding is clear.
نعم.
But this thing where he says, وَلِوَلَدْكُمْ فَسَائِلْ لَمْ يَخْرُجْ مَعَ وَلَدِ الدَّمْ.
نعم.
What situation is he describing that? Oh.
Like who? You want a case study? Like no.
No.
The thing is, what he's saying is that if
Where there's no postnatal bleeding?
no postnatal bleeding whatsoever, but the fact that she's given birth,
Yeah.
she would have to. Let's say in the rare incident of there being no bleeding, let's say on that rare occasion, she would still have to do ghusl because she is like she's given birth, and that would put her in that state almost of the nufasa state, although there is an absence of bleeding, so she would still do the ghusl. I don't think that's common though, but I mean, it's just saying if, because the thing is this, that the ruling generally says that, look, for the nufasa, she must do ghusl. But the question then arises that, alright, what if she didn't bleed? Then what about that?
And she didn't bleed for 40 days or just at all?
Just at all. Because she doesn't have to bleed for 40 days, no condition. So the thing is that if she didn't bleed at all, let's just say in that condition, if there was a case, and I'm sure there have been some cases, right, where there's been no blood, whatever, but in that case she would still do ghusl. It's just clarifying the mawqif, just the stance really.
So childbirth on its own.
Like dry childbirth almost. I don't know how impossible that is.
Right.
Do you know of such a case?
I mean, basically, everyone, to my knowledge, releases lochia.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might not be blood, but it'll be a liquid that's of a colour between yellow and red. It's just basically serous discharge.
Okay.
Remembering serious discharge. So basically, basically what he's saying is, if you give birth to a child,
And there was no blood, you'd still do
and you
ghusl.
couldn't see any blood,
You still do
you still
ghusl.
do ghusl.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. As rare as it may be.
Yeah.
But maybe there have been, I don't know, maybe there have been cases. I have read during, I mean, to be honest, it's not been an area of that much interest that I've actually decided to research. But I do recall reading, like when I did go over this in like the books of Fatawa, them citing some rare example saying such and such a woman did give birth and there was no blood or whatever. And I don't know whether it's just hearsay or but they have cited these examples in the books.
Giving birth and not having any blood is one thing, but then any kind of discharge afterwards is another thing. And the second scenario just constantly.
I mean, maybe the discharge was clearly not blood for them, that's why.
Okay.
But maybe they just thought, oh, that's more translucent or more this as opposed to blood. And so, but I mean, I don't know, any gynecologists or anybody present? No, doc? An area of specialism, is it? No? Okay, okay. Right, so نعم.
والسنة 6 أغسال الغسل للجمعة والإحرام ولدخول مكة والعيدين وغسل الميت.
نعم, and the ستة أقسام, 6 different types of sunnah أغسال, sunnah ghusl. And by the way, the verb ghusl, or the noun I should say ghusl, it refers to the actual ghusl, and ghusl means to wash. Okay, just to clarify that. So, al-ghusl lil-jum'ah, these are the sunnah, the recommended, or we could say the more strongly recommended type of aghsal for jum'ah, ihram, this is for like umrah or hajj, walidukhuli Makkah, before entering Makkah. And this could be that, for example, you're there already and maybe you've come out, you're going, whatever it is, lidukhul Makkah, so you're in Makkah, it is recommended. Wal-eidain wa ghusl al-mayyit. Ghusl al-mayyit, we did mention there is a hadith, man ghassala mayyitan falyaghtasil. For the ghusl. It's a good point, actually.
And also, Ibn Abi Zayd said it was wajib after entering ihram.
For the actual ghusl.
Ihram.
Ah, Doc, I like the memory.
He did, didn't he?
The actual ghusl, no, they're not.
Then never read the result. No, he didn't say it.
No, don't be silly. No, I think there is a ghusl, which he strongly emphasizes, yeah.
I was saying, he says it's far.
But this isn't, you know, the dukhul Makkah doesn't have to be that one.
No, the one above.
The ihram one, yeah. I mean, yeah. The thing is, the ihram as well, by the way, well, I mean, that's a total random thing which we'll come to later on, but it is actually the state of mind and not the clothing, which many people don't actually realize. The ihram isn't actually the clothing, it's actually the state of mind. So when people say you're in ihram, don't actually necessarily mean, although that it's the white cloth for the men as an example, they actually mean the state of mind of ihram.
Ritual again.
So, for example, you know when you have to go beyond a certain place, you can't go without being in ihram. You can actually go without being in those clothes. You just give a sacrifice, but you couldn't go not being in ihram. And ihram is that state of mind. So, but you see, that's a good example as well of how, you know, if you take the ummah as a whole, and you know, you have these different ways of thinking, like you have like concrete operational, formal operational, and so on. And you know, Piagetian, I don't know if you've done Piagetian type of thought breakdown, but the thing is that, you see, concrete type of thought usually would be in children who are perhaps reaching their teens up until that type of point. But usually beyond there, you should have the faculty for what they call the formal operational stage, in which you can think abstractly. But many people still don't really develop them. Even grown-ups, some people lack that ability. So people, for example, younger people, you can talk to them about a thing. Like I can say, for example, this thing is beautiful. This thing is like this. But talking about beauty as a concept becomes difficult. It has to be concrete. And it's interesting that as an ummah as well, like you see, like this, speaking of ihram as a state is very like formal operational, it's very conceptual. So it's difficult. People can't do it. So it's then been shifted down in common thought, down to the actual what you wear, because that is ihram. That's what because people can fathom that, they can think that. See, so it's interesting. Naam. Okay.
والمستحب 6 أغسال للوقوف بعرفة والمزدلفة والطواف بالبيت والسعي ولمن غسل ميتا وللمستحاضة إذا انقطع دمها.
نعم. You see, the thing is, he does say, by the way, here, right. Okay. Right, coming back here, he's going to mention now recommended types. Okay? Recommended types of, and this is a less, the sunnah is more emphasized, this is recommended. Wuquf bi'arafah, standing at Arafah. Arafah is obviously a place for dua, a place for, you could say adhkar, but more importantly dua. And so being in a pure state would obviously help. The outward helps the inward and vice versa, doesn't it? So, quite spiritual today, I must say, on a roll. Might be accepting bay'ah by the end of the dars. Right, so, wal Muzdalifa, right, also the Muzdalifa, tawaf bil bayt, doing tawaf around the Kaaba, sa'i. Right, sorry, a moment before when we said ghusl al-mayyit, what that meant to say was the ghusl of the mayyit is a sunnah. He's placed it as a sunnah, which will kind of, I suppose, we haven't covered in too much detail here, but we did take a look at in Janazah. He did go over it, that there was some ikhtilaf and some of the ulama said it was wajib, but Qadi Iyad has generally put it under sunnah. And that whole thing comes back to that same debate about when or similar debate to when a person embraces Islam. That is it because of the person being impure, or is it a ritual? And the same thing with death. That is a person now all of a sudden impure, that we're purifying him, or is this just like a farewell ritual? And that's what we generally people, and there is a debate. I won't say there's more on one side or on the other. There's like plenty of ulama on both sides that see this being that the person has become impure with death. Okay, or that some have said it's a ritual, and that Qadi Iyad has put as sunnah.
On page 69 he says
yeah.
So it's like,
but the thing is this, yeah, huququhu, that you have a haqq to have that being done to you. Haqq isn't necessarily, you see, the ghusl in itself. You see, like I give an example, like he's going to mention takfinuhu, having a kafan and so on as well. But the thing is, nobody's going to say it's a fard to have a kafan, for example. But the community, you have that right upon them that they provide that for you. But let's say, for an actual burial, it's not something without which the burial couldn't go ahead. But you still, as a person, have that right. Do you understand? Like, so with that, without specifying the actual. So it's like saying, as an example, look, like if I was ill, I suppose I would have that right that you kind of visit me, or kind of ask, how are you doing, or how is this? Now that doesn't mean, at the same time, that it's wajib. Do you see what I mean? But it's like, it's seen as a haqq that the person may have upon the other people that they will. But it's a contingent responsibility, isn't it? It's not a.
So he's not really using it in the Shara.
He is using it as from an adab perspective, that you have that haqq upon them. And yes, if they abandoned it, it would be kind of sinful. This is why there is ikhtilaf in this ghusl. And this is what. Yeah, because people have said this is wajib. One of the reasons being that if people just chose to abandon it, they've said that they would be sinful. The other angle is that maybe they would be sinful because they're intentionally abandoning a sunnah. Like they kind of, like, oh, we don't need this sunnah. Where it's do you see what I mean? So it's from that istighfaf angle. But he has put it as sunnah. Other people have put it as an obligation. But just to clarify the term, when they use as haqq, it doesn't have to always mean that it has to be wajib. They could just be generally speaking that you have a haqq upon this person, or this person has a haqq, or people in general. Naam. So, and he says, what liman ghassala mayyitan. Here he's now saying it's recommended for the person who is kind of doing the ghusl to the dead person, that they themselves do ghusl. There is some difference of opinion as to when. Some of the Malikiyat said that you do ghusl before you wash the dead body. And that's how they interpreted that hadith to mean Man ghassala mayyitan, ay man sayughassilu mayyitan falyaghtasil. Like as in whoever wants to do this, man arada an yaquma bi ghusl al-mayyit falyaghtasil. That's how Ibn Abdul Barr had kind of taken it to that angle, which kind of makes a lot of sense actually, in a way that you yourself are in a ritual state of heightened ritual state of purity, which will perhaps make you be more reflective. Because I'm sure washing a dead body would be quite, I'm sure it would have like a deep effect on people. I don't know, have you ever washed a dead body? Have you? Washed a dead body? Okay. MashaAllah. Have you? Okay. I think it'd be very moving actually it'd be daunting, presumably quite scary in a way, especially if you've known the person. Probably more scary because the person's now dead. So I suppose if you're in a state of ghusl as well, which has heightened your own inner experiential type of self, that you feel more, elated in a way, or more pure. Not saying that you weren't pure before, but you just feel that, and therefore you're in this contemplative, reflective type of situation. It probably have a greater effect. Although many ulama have said that you should do ghusl after having washed the dead body, although that fits more with the hadith, but doesn't seem to be so purposive, apparently. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to add up, but it seems to go more in line with the wording of the hadith, as opposed to what Ibn Abdul Barr had stated. That still goes with the wording of the hadith, but perhaps, a bit less, but it seems to make more sense. That's the difference. نعم وللمستحاضة إذا انقطع دمها. And the woman with non-menstrual bleeding, when her bleeding comes to an end. نعم والغسل الواجب.
والغسل الواجب يجب ب10 شروط: البلوغ والعقل والإسلام أو بلوغ الدعوة ودخول وقت صلاة فرض أو تذكرها وكون المكلف ذاكرا غير ساه ولا غافل ولا نائم وارتفاع دم الحيض والنفاس والقدرة على الغسل وثبوت حكم الحدث الموجب له ووجوده من الماء المطلق ما يكفيه وهو مشتمل على فرائض وسنن وفضائل.
Alright. على فرائض. Look at the nahu coming out. Right, so والغسل الواجب يجب ب10 شروط. Once again, Qadi Iyad with the nice round number there. 10 conditions for the ghusl al-wajib. Al-bulugh, pubescence. Al-aql, reasoning. Al-islam, bulugh al-da'wah. He's mentioned that as the da'wah having reached a person. And that debate, we went through it before, the whole thing.
What is it again?
It's all to do with really, you see.
Someone comes to hear about stuff.
Yeah, the thing will, I suppose it touches up on a bit of the, are you mukallaf with certain things, even if, like, the good and bad, like, can you identify good and bad, and if Islam has reached you, because according to some people, that even if Islam hasn't reached you, that you should still, you'd still kind of be accountable for certain things, because you should be able to detect or understand with the type of moral code, let's say, that we have, some things like, let's say, killing or lying or stuff like this. That has a little angle in it. And then secondly, in a lot of the books, they don't usually use this term, like they've just said Islam is enough, is sufficient. But bulugh al-da'wah, that's what it tends to cover, the people of fatra. The people not of fitra, Or I suppose you could say the people of Fitra. Sorry, same thing. Right, you could say the people of Fitra, like let's say some place where Islam hasn't reached them at all. Right, so it has to have reached. I mean, it's common sense. Obviously, if it hasn't reached them, then how is it going to be valid in that sense?
But you're gonna, if you have Islam, you're gonna have Bulugh Da'wah.
That is why he does say "oh," which is it's almost synonymous. This is what most people
If
don't.
you have Bulugh Da'wah, you're not Muslim. You have to make Muslim.
No.
Isn't that just making up a technical obligation?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's like, it's going back to that thing that is a non-Muslim addressed with certain things, but really it's the same thing. You see, you couldn't. This is why in general books they don't make this type of a distinction. They'll just say, look, Islam. Full stop.
Because we discussed this in that Shawkani.
Yeah.
My point is.
No, actually, we discussed it in the Ashmawiya one as well, quite some length.
Yeah, but we're going into detail with Irshad.
Yeah.
But why is he put it here? Is it?
He's just said it as like for example.
Is it the place to put it?
Because without it, they'd only be 9.
No, the thing is, he has put a few others in here that are a bit unnecessary as well. So, like having water, for example, water that's like obvious, isn't it? Because how are you going to do ghusl without the water? So it's a bit of an obvious one as well. How, if the da'wah hasn't even reached you, how are you going to know what to do, even, let alone it being valid? Do you understand? Like, so, but he has put it there, and he has put so just to kind of let you know, this isn't a separate.
You know the discussion that people have regarding the not being informed of the obligation.
Oh,
So if you're not informed of the obligation, then you're not held accountable for it.
yeah, true. I mean, I suppose that could come into it. Yeah.
If you live outside of Islamic land,
Mm-hmm.
then that is a rukhsah for not being informed of obligation, which only exists if you live outside.
Yeah, circumstantially, they wouldn't. Yeah, because, I mean, that's true. That could fit this picture as well. Like, he's saying, like, let's say you were a Muslim, but you never actually knew that, for example, I have to do ghusl over this particular thing. So I suppose you would be excused, like, obviously, because if you didn't have knowledge of it, like, how could you be taken into account? That would constitute taklif ma la yutaq. That would be asking you to do something which is impossible, because you couldn't do something you're unaware of, or you don't believe that you have to do. So, yeah, but don't, sometimes with someone, like, don't sweat that too much. Bulugh da'wah just really means that Islam has reached them, or the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ has reached them. Just in case they said we were still on from the fitrah, carrying on, this, all the way, but we haven't reached, the da'wah of the Prophet hasn't reached us, but we're still carrying on with the Abrahamic type, I don't know, let's just say, it doesn't order the people in between, the people of Fatrah, between which prophets come, however they've continued, or they're the people of Fitrah in some places, they've just not had a religion reach them, I don't know, in maybe some remote place in this world. But the point is...
You said you covered that in the lesson.
Yeah.
But, is there a condition of a mu'jiza being presented by a messenger in order for that to be binding on people?
The mu'jiza upon the people.
So as an example, if someone comes as a prophet, but without a mu'jiza, is his message not binding?
No, it is binding.
It is binding.
It is binding.
Even though he doesn't produce a miracle to substantiate.
Yeah, it's not necessary, because many of the, like the Anbiya, the Nabis that was sent, or the Mursal, Mursaleen, the Apostles, many of them don't necessarily have like miraculous, or like, these miracles like the way the major prophets or the major messengers had. And many of them came ta'yidan, as a support to other people that come before them or in their time. So like, let's say there was a messenger or whatever, and now other prophets were sent to support him, or there was a prophet and other prophets were sent to support him, or he had now passed away and other prophets were sent just to reinforce that message. And it wasn't necessary that they always had miracles. The thing is that miracles are, in one way, they are absolutely they're kind of binding, I mean, you'd say that they are binding. Obviously, people at the time would have. The thing is, if they deny after a clear sign, and that too usually in a point where they ask for it, they say, "Oh, do this and do this, then do this," and it happens, and then they deny. Then there was a great chance historically that like the wrath and the punishment of Allah would afflict them. If they did something like, not just like, so for example, Musa alayhi salam splitting the sea wasn't something that was just like a desperation to get out. That wasn't them saying. But where they said to, for example, like let's say they say to a prophet, go on then do this, bring this person back from the dead then, or do this, like the way they said to Salih alayhi salam, okay, make a rock, make a camel jump out of this rock and make it, and that too, it should be a pregnant camel, and then the camel should give birth in front of us, and then this and this and this, and then it happens exactly like that. And then they say, I don't know, I'm still in, I'm almost there, like it's, so really, and sometimes, they say that there was like a trend that when the prophets, like if they were totally exhausted, like they did everything, and everybody denies them, and if they kind of annoy like if they basically not just frustrate's a kind word, but if they really almost torture that prophet to the extent that that prophet or messenger leaves the people and goes, that if that, and they as a collective whole deny the message, that within a few days a punishment would land upon them. If they pushed a prophet to that extent, not with the community, none of them accepted, not like some of them accepted, some didn't, and then not like that, but if they as a collective renounce the message and they push the prophet away, as they did with Yunus alayhi salam, like when they chased him away, that and the verse that, what's the وَمَا فَنَفَعَهَا إِيمَانُهَا إِلَّا قَوْمِ يُونَس, that this that there was no ummah that when they had seen our signs, that their tawbah and their iman benefited them. Because when the punishment of Allah comes, at that point for you to do tawbah is unacceptable. Like it wouldn't be like let's say Allah was to send down, I don't know, showering rocks or whatever and now you see them landing, you say, oh, I believe now. It would be too late. Like you would still get punished. Like whether your faith is accepted is between you and Allah, but that punishment wouldn't stop. Now Allah says, and that was with every people illa qawmi Yunus. See, the people of Yunus, when they actually scared him away, they chased him away and everything, and then they started seeing like some of the signs, like clouds coming and all this, and then all of them came out into the open. Like they brought the old, elderly, the young, they even brought their animals, everything, and they came disheveled and they cried for tawbah and everything, and Allah accepted their tawbah. And that was like one people and the punishment was kind of taken away from them. So this is, so generally, I mean, miracles, and really and truly speaking, miracles are only for the prophets. Everything else is an illusion. Naam. So, بلوغ.
That's a very easy.
You mean everyone other than Mu'tazili?
Right. وَدُخُولُ وَقْتِ صَلَاةِ فَرْض, that or the entering of an obligatory prayer time, أو تذكرها. You see, the thing is, if you're in a state of janaba, like you're junub, you're not actually under obligation to be doing ghusl straight away. Okay, you can just, like, let's say a person was junub and thought, you know what, I'm just going back to sleep. I'm just knocking out here, or I'm just hanging about, or I'm just doing this, I'm doing that. They can actually do that. The obligation emerges once the time of salah emerges. Then they have to, for the salah, they have to do it, remove that state of impurity. Or if they remembered, oh yeah, I've got to still pray this salah, because the moment you remember it, it becomes fard upon you. Right. And then he's added, and that the fact, condition that the mukallaf is somebody who remembers, and he's not forgetful, and he's not negligent, and he's not asleep. And these are just adding, like, these are like comes. Obviously, if you're asleep, then obviously, how are you going to be doing ghusl, right? And that he's not being coerced. And the fact that the menstrual and non-menstrual or postnatal bleeding has stopped. And the fact that you are capable of doing ghusl. And the fact that you actually had a reason to do ghusl, like the fact that basically you'd broken your ghusl, otherwise there was no reason to do ghusl, and having enough water to do ghusl. And with that he seals 10. So you can see maybe the Qadi struggled a bit there, he brought in some, but he did it. He goes, who's the Qadi, huh? Who's the Qadi? He sealed them. He got 10.
You know when he says wala ghafilin, because he's saying that the ghusl is wajib upon كون المكلف ذاكرا غير ساهٍ ولا غافل ولا نائم. Okay, غير ساهٍ fine, ولا نائم. What's he trying to say with ghafil? Someone who's just negligent.
Yeah, like for example, it's not that you forgot about it, but you kind of became neglectful for a moment, like you got distracted. And I suppose a distracted person, no, a distracted person technically isn't somebody who's forgotten. Like, I suppose to forget something and then remember, oh yeah, I didn't have to. See, like that, that's not necessarily the case as you forgot, but you became preoccupied with something else that it got pushed off your attention type of scale, if you like. But it wasn't that you've forgotten. The moment you dealt with it, it came back to you. Technically, they just got different names for them. But I mean, it's all the same type of thing. Ultimately, I mean, he's just putting them there. A lot of these are like, you didn't have to say them. You would have still understood exactly what he meant. He says that this has fara'id, it has sunan and fada'il. We can go through them. They're not that many. If you're right with that, yeah.
Yeah, let's just finish it.
نعم.
ففرائضه 6. النية أوله أو عند التلبس به، واستصحاب حكمها في جميعه، وعموم الجسد بالغسل، وإمراره اليد معه أو ما يقوم مقام اليد، وكون